Nah, we don't have a speaker. Why'd you ask? I mean, you knew the answer, right? You knew we didn't have a speaker. I knew we didn't have a speaker. Everybody knew we didn't have a speaker, except they had this vote. They had this vote and they closed the doors and they said, secret ballot, everybody. And everyone wrote their name on a piece of paper. And Steve Scalise, the congressman from Louisiana, the House Majority Leader, got 113 votes. Okay, this is the guy we're going to put up. And then Thomas Massey of Kentucky said, I'm not voting for Steve Scalise. And then it was Chip Roy, Texas, Chip Roy, no hair. He said, I'm not voting for Steve Scalise. And then Lauren Boebert said, I'm voting for Jim Jordan. Also, anybody want to go to the movies? I mean, that's exactly what she said. That is exactly what she said. And so now what has happened is that Steve Scalise has removed himself from contention.
I know we've been following this. It's been quite a journey. And there's still a long way to go. I just shared with my colleagues that I'm withdrawing my name as a candidate for the Speaker designee. If you look at over the last few weeks, if you look at where our conference is, there's still work to be done. Our conference still has to come together and is not there. There are still some people that have their own agendas. And I was very clear, we have to have everybody put their agendas on the side and focus on what this country needs. This country is counting on us to come back together. This House of Representatives needs a speaker, and we need to open up the House again. But clearly, not everybody is there. And there's still schisms that have to get resolved.
Yeah, they don't have a speaker. And it doesn't look like the resolution is coming. Guys, welcome to the show, presented by Americans for Prosperity, AmericansForProsperity.org. Economic liberty, free speech. These are good things. I'm a fan of both of them. That is Ed Morrissey, also a fan of that right there. He is the Capo di Tutti Capo over at hotair.com. You know, I was joking with you before we started. This is very much Monty Python calling their shot. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. We still don't know who the speaker is going to be, and a guy can win in the closed door and not be able to get the votes on the floor. What happened here?
Well, I to be honest with you, Tony, I'm flat out flummoxed by this. I mean, if you're going to have a nominating process, right? I mean, I think the basic understanding of that is whoever wins that will get the support of the entire caucus. So what you had here is people arguing, people, by the way, who probably won seats by something like, 2 points or 3 points to get into Congress in the first place, that the only person who's a legitimate contender is somebody who can get all 217 votes in an election. Well, that's nonsense, right? I mean, this is absolute nonsense. So now they're going to have another nominating process, I guess, in which nobody's going to feel bound to support the results. So what's the point? I don't understand what they are doing here at all. This is nothing more than a collection of personal grievances getting in the way of doing the nation's business. And this is a bad time to be stumbling around like this when you've got all sorts of crises erupting internationally. You've got the border crisis on the southern border. And the only lever of power that Republicans control, they've basically given up because they can't decide who gets to put their hand on it. I mean, it's so silly. There's nothing here that's substantive. It's all just for the clicks. That's
so for the clicks is, of course, a conversation about Congressman Matt Gaetz and why we went through this process of motion to vacate. To begin with, I opposed it because I wanted a plan, and well, it turns out I was right that a plan is a good thing here. But what is it about Steve Scalise? I mean, he has been there for a very long time. Yes, he was McCarthy's number 2, and that could just be it. This is the guy who got shot at the congressional baseball practice by the Democrat, the Bernie brother, who was trying to destroy the American way of life by trying to destroy government. I guess that's the way we engage terminology now. He's got a story. He has been effective to get this level of leadership. Why are people like Massey and Roy so opposed to him?
I mean, again, I wish I could come up with rational reasons why we're doing this, Tony, but I just can't. There's no rational reason for this. Scalise, I mean, they deposed Kevin McCarthy. The two people who are in the running for this were both people who supported Kevin McCarthy. Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan, both of them supported Kevin McCarthy in that motion to vacate thing. They are pretty much going to pursue the same policies that Kevin McCarthy was going to pursue, because the circumstances of what's going on in Congress hasn't changed. Democrats still control the Senate. Democrats still control the White House. You only have a 9-seat majority in the House of Representatives. There's only so much you can do. And so there's no real point to this other than there's a bunch of personal grievances that are getting in the way of getting business done. And I think people looking at this are shaking their heads and wondering whether Republicans can even bring themselves to govern any longer, in large part because you've got a small but adequate contingent of people who don't want to do anything, who just really want to tear the whole thing down.
I have always bristled, talking to Ed Morrissey of hotair.com, I have always bristled at this idea that Republicans don't want to govern. They just aren't interested in actually doing the governing. This at least lends credence to that argument, and I have to now allow it in. The people who supported Gates in the motion to vacate, never mind those members of Congress, I'm talking about the people all across the country, they really believe that you created a side deal regarding Ukraine spending. You went to the Democrats to get the continuing resolution. This is unacceptable, and it was devious, I think, is the way people took it, and we can't have this happen. They actually take it from a moral side that the only way to fix the problem, Ed, is to actually fix the problem. And I understand those people. Like those are my people. I get it. I just think that you have to have a plan. Is there something in your view to the idea of the Republicans, once they get the power, they're actually afraid to utilize it?
Well, utilize it to what end? I mean, the reason why Kevin McCarthy had to go to the Democrats for that CR, for the clean CR for 45 days, is because he couldn't get the Gates 8 to support the other CR that he'd put out there that actually did reduce discretionary level spending, I believe, by 8% across the board. And it wouldn't have gone through the Senate, but at least it would have given them some leverage to negotiate over a CR while they're still working on these 12 appropriations bills. They're not talking about omnibus bills. McCarthy was opposed to an omnibus bill. He was still sticking with the 12 normal order or regular order appropriation bills, but he didn't want to shut the government down, in large part because government shutdowns play very badly for Republicans, especially in this instance. So he offered a CR that cut spending, and they didn't want to support it. Without full and unanimous support for that, the only way to keep government open was to go to the Democrats and arrange for a 45-day CR that was clean. And that, by the way, was competing against another CR that was percolating in the Senate, which would have been worse. So because he was able to get that through with Democrats on the House, and the Senate ended up adopting McCarthy's CR, which gave him 45 days of the same level of spending until they got those 12 bills passed. Now, I guess you can complain about that, but if the only alternative was we're going to shut the government down until Democrats, in the Senate and the White House completely accede to the demands of 8 people in the House, that's not much of a plan, and it's not very realistic.
So you're making the argument that it's Republicans fall in love, Democrats fall in line, right? We hear this time and again that Republicans they don't and they won't, and there is for some possibly the idea of the individual over the general. Again, there is this spending issue that the people across America want to do away with. But as we now look forward, you don't have Scalise, which is really a kind of noble thing to do, is to say, you know what? I'm not going to get the votes here. We can't do this anymore. I'll step out, go elect Jim Jordan, except it might not be Jim Jordan. Patrick McHenry is the Speaker pro tem. He is possibly a candidate in this. Some people are now bringing up Tom Emmer from Minnesota, who you're familiar with, the minority whip. And then there's the people who still want to bring back Kevin McCarthy. So are we, with Scalise out, any closer to a speaker?
Nope, we are not.
Fantastic.
And, yeah, it's just fantastic. Yeah, this is all great. We're no closer to it than until people get embarrassed. And I'll tell you one reason why I know we're no closer to it. A bunch of people left and went home to their districts yesterday and today. There's supposed to be a caucus this morning or early this afternoon among House Republicans, and there are going to be a number of members that don't show up to it because they're sick and tired of it. It's a waste of time, and so they all went home. So no, we're not any closer to this. We're not going to be any closer to this, at least for several days. I like Tom Emmer. Tom Emmer would be fine. I like Steve Scalise. I like Jim Jordan. I like Kevin McCarthy. I like Patrick McHenry, for instance. And, if they want to make Patrick McHenry speaker, that's fine. Whoever is going to be speaker is going to have the exact same problems that Kevin McCarthy had. He's got a 9-seat majority. He will have a 9-seat majority in the House, a Democrat Senate, and a Democrat president. And eventually you have to pass it.
And one has to assume there's not going to be a change on the motion to vacate. Like, that's still going to be part of the rules package. Are they going to realize, hey, maybe we're not going to do that?
Well, I'll tell you what I think is one of the things that could happen. I'm not going to say it's likely, but one of the things that could happen is you may have some of those people who are so disgusted in the Republican conference that they go over to the Democrats and say, we're going to propose a moderate and we need you guys to line up behind them. And the price for that will probably change the rule on the motion to vacate to make the threshold back up to 50, plus concessions on things like rules and the
spending.
Spending and possibly the investigations into Biden Incorporated. These are the things that we may be blowing up over this stupid, petty, useless fight over who's going to be House Speaker.
I'm here to tell you that if we lose the impeachment inquiry, I will support anybody who runs against Matt Gaetz. We lose the impeachment inquiry over this, I'll be out of my head. Let me change gears on you, Ed, because there's been as we're watching things unfold in Israel, and we're watching this war as Hamas attacked Israel, Hamas, a terrorist organization, murdering 1,200, getting ready for a ground offensive. Warnings have been given via the United Nations to get out of northern Gaza. People are saying, how dare you? But of course, they always say, how dare you? There's been a conversation among some, including presidential candidates, about, is helping Israel different than helping Ukraine? And why are we so focused on this? This came to a bit of a head for you when you saw Vivek Ramaswamy on with Tucker Carlson on X. And this was your headline: Ramaswamy, American support for Israel is all about the Benjamins or something. That is, of course, relating that to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and saying that Jews have hypnotized Israel, has hypnotized the world, and it's all about the Benjamins. It's the only reason anybody cares about Israel. That leads you over there at hotair.com to a story about the GOP having selective moral outrage driven by money. Here's the quote. That is the screenshot right there regarding Vivek on Tucker Carlson's show. The selective nature, says Vivek Ramaswamy, of ignoring certain other conflicts, even more importantly, ignoring the interests of the U.S. right here at home, is what irritates the heck out of me. It is shameful. And I think that there are, frankly, financial and corrupting influences that lead them exactly to speak the way they do. That's just the hard truth. In your view, Ed Morrissey, that's Ilhan Omar talk?
Basically, yes. And look, he went on Hannity last night to say, I was talking about the Azerbaijan, the focus on Azerbaijan, as if we've all been discussing nothing but Azerbaijan in our media for the last week. It's nonsense. This guy is a demagogue. He's a liar. I mean, in public, he's not even good at it anymore. I find it extremely offensive that the idea that supporting our allies, has anything to do with being bought off. Nobody's giving me gold to talk about Israel. Nobody's given normal, rational politicians gold so that they support Israel any more than that's true for Ukraine, any more than that would be true for any of our allies. They're our allies because we share common interests. Israel is our ally because it's the only liberal democracy in that region that is willing to defend Western values. They are on the tip of the spear in this bloody jihadist war something that we learned after 9/11 and we've since forgotten. And you got idiots all over the country today that are going to be running around celebrating Hamas as decolonizers today. This is, I mean, I just find this to be extremely offensive, and I would say disqualifying. Of course, you know, that's up to the voters, but I think it
is always up to the voters. But it was interesting, you know, that the Hannity interview, which is a worthy watch, because it is kind of thunderous in this way. And I wonder if you're Iowa, if you're New Hampshire, Vivek is in fourth place right now nationally. It's Trump, DeSantis, Haley, and Ramaswamy. And for many people, it's Trump and nothing else when you talk about a 30-point spread.
Sure.
Right. Is this the moment that somebody like Pence and Scott, because they're the only two guys who can do it because they play in that exact moral clarity world, can say, who the hell do you think you are? I mean, go after him 24/7 and break his fourth place position?
I'm not sure he has a fourth place position, to be honest with you. I mean, we're seeing national polling, but you know, I don't take a lot of stock in polling. Is he spending money on the ground? Is he building organizations? You know, you've got Pence on the ground. You've got you know, Trump is basically a ground starter. Anytime he shows up, he's got people on the ground, right? You know, DeSantis has got people on the ground. I think Haley is investing in some organizational stuff. I don't think Ramaswamy is doing anything other than just doing what he's doing right now. So I don't expect Ramaswamy really to be even competitive in a place like Iowa, or even in a place like New Hampshire, which is probably a little bit better suited to his brand of politics. But yeah, I think that Pence may end up doing that. Pence was certainly willing to go after him in both of the televised debates, and
not as much as Haley.
Well, I think Haley's going to go after him again too.
Oh, undoubtedly.
Yeah,
undoubtedly. Yeah. It's interesting to see her in the polling rise, because like you, I don't trust the polling, and I don't know if I trust that. I think they like the fighter, but I can't imagine that there's a real thirst in the party for Nikki Haley. I'm not even mad at the woman. I just don't see it in my daily maneuverings.
I don't see it either. But I do hear it from people that they're impressed with Nikki Haley. And look, I mean, there's two candidates in here, three if you count Mike Pence, who've actually been governors, who have a good track record of conservative or center-right governance. And that's DeSantis, Haley, and Pence. I think Pence is done. I think he's a spent force, so I don't even really consider him as part of this. And Doug Burgum too. If you want to include that, Doug Burgum, I think, as a dark horse candidate, makes a lot of sense. And that's really what it's going to come down to, I think, for Republican voters. They usually like the governors. They usually like the people with executive experience. And Nikki Haley has got that. And she's got foreign policy experience as well.
First, I think Burgum is going to end up in somebody's cabinet. I think that much is for sure. The fact that you overlooked former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie makes me the happiest man who ever lived. That is so great.
Oh. He's a two-termer. He was a two-termer, but you know, Christie's never going to, he's never even going to come close to competing for the nomination. He's really there to take out Donald Trump, and he's enjoying the heck out of himself while he's doing it.
If I had a bourbon next to me, I'd toast to your health, but I've got just the coffee. So l'chaim to you.
L'chaim.
I'll send you a mug. You need something better than that. It's Ed Morrissey of hotair.com. Be sure to check out hotair.com. Check out his pieces. Ed, always appreciate it. Thank you so much. And my thanks to you. It is good to have the conversations. Good to be able to talk to you. Find everything at TonyKatz.com. Be a part of what we're doing over there. Help us grow it out. And don't forget to subscribe on Locals. That is the thing to do. I should say subscribe on Rumble. Find us on Locals. You subscribe on Rumble, you find us on Locals. It's just that easy. I'll catch you next time, guys. Oh, and thanks to Americans for Prosperity, Economic Liberty, Free Speech. That's the name of the game. Almost forgot my sponsor. That's a really, really bad thing to do. I just making fun of Chris Christie made me all sorts of forgetful. I'll catch you next time, guys. Take care.